Okay, what's going to happen to me when my company goes into liquidation? This video is updated for 2024. Now, if business debts are keeping you awake at night, you can't pay your bounce back loan, can't pay your C-bills, can't pay your recovery loan scheme, your HMRC arrears are building up, it is a sure sign that your business is insolvent. And today I'm going to explain absolutely everything that may happen to a UK director once they place their business into liquidation. And I'm going to share with you what most other insolvency practitioners keep a secret. So please keep watching. Now in the video, I'm going to discuss understanding liquidation, a topic on lots of people's minds right now. I'm going to discuss the director's roles and responsibilities pre-liquidation and post-liquidation. I'm going to talk about the liquidation process. I'm also, and this is the important stuff, I'm going to talk about the impact on directors' lives personally after going into insolvency. I'm then going to talk about how you can protect yourself and life after liquidation for a director. So, section 1, what I'm going to talk about is understanding liquidation. So, I'm going to define liquidation for you and types of liquidation. Liquidation is a process that a UK company will go through mainly when it becomes insolvent. And insolvency means the business cannot afford to pay its debts when they fall due, or the liabilities of the business is more than the business's assets, or the company has legal action against it. It has a CCJ, or it has a stat demand, or it has a winding up petition. All signs that the business is insolvent. Now, there's a number of types of liquidation, and I'll cover the first one up that I don't think you're that interested about. It's called a members voluntary liquidation. A members voluntary liquidation is a solvent liquidation, and what it means is the business can afford to pay off all its debts. And once it's paid off all its debts, it's probably got 30 grand plus in the bank. Now, if that is the liquidation route that you're deciding to take, the impact on you as a director once you've gone into liquidation is very little. In fact, it's quite positive, because you should be able to withdraw the funds left in the business at a more favourable tax rate, okay? The next thing I'm going to talk to you about is what a compulsory liquidation is. And a compulsory liquidation is where a director clearly has breached their fiduciary duties, you've not acted responsibly, and one of your creditors petitions to wind your business up via the courts. Excuse me. And what they're going to do then, it's the end of the debt collection process. They petition to wind your company up in court. Your company doesn't pay the debt in court, and the business is compulsory liquidated. It's then given to the official receiver to do the investigations. Please, 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 if you can help it, you need to avoid compulsory liquidation at all costs. The third option is a voluntary liquidation, and that's where your business has become insolvent, but as a responsible director, you want to find somebody out there to do the process for you. And you know what, it's quite an interesting dynamic, insolvency, because for the first time in your business life, you're going to actively go out there to find somebody to represent the other side. And the best way to explain it is, if I was to find a solicitor, I want a solicitor to be working on, who's going to work on my best interest, going to represent me. That isn't the case in insolvency. Even on a voluntary liquidation, you're finding somebody who will actually represent the interests of creditors. So they're going to represent the interests of HMRC, the banks, etc. So you're better off going down a voluntary process than a compulsory process, but be mindful that the insolvency practitioner is duty bound to act in the creditor's best interest. It's sort of where we come into the market director first. We give free and independent advice to the director on what your interests are, okay? So that's an idea of what liquidation is. Now, there's a number of circumstances why a company might go into liquidation. Excuse me. And mainly it's because the business has become insolvent, but it could be because the director has suffered ill health. It could be a change in market conditions. The business model that you had has failed overnight. There's a number of reasons why a business would go into liquidation. One of the things that I see more than ever is a company doesn't get paid for something that they've done. So if they're not getting paid a big chunk of money, that can have a knock-on effect, and the business is not able to pay the people that they owe money to. Now, once you become insolvent, right? When a business becomes insolvent, so you can no longer afford to pay your debts on time. So if you're watching this and you are on a time to pay arrangement with HMRC, or you are robbing Peter to pay Paul every month, your creditor list is growing and growing, you are insolvent. It's important you listen to this. So once a business becomes insolvent, your role and responsibilities of a director, they change. Because when you start a business, what you are there to do is to generate profit for stakeholders and shareholders, make money for you. The minute you become insolvent, what you can't do is make your creditors' positions any worse. That's really, really important. So the minute that you become insolvent, you've got to be mindful of, right, well, I can't be taking on more credit. I shouldn't be racking up any more HMRC arrears. The spotlight is very much on you, okay? Now, it's at that point, really, you need to stop taking deposits, try not to take on any more debt, don't empty the business bank account, and it's at this point that really you need to pick the phone up and seek some insolvency advice. Now, once a business goes into liquidation, right, I'm just going to go through what this process of liquidation is first thing is you seek advice. You might have a referral of somebody who's a friend's worked with in the past. You might be looking at a funny looking bald chap with specs on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram or LinkedIn. And you make an inquiry. You pick the phone up and you seek some advice. And what a good insolvency practitioner will do is outline all the different bits of advice. Is it a straightforward liquidation, like a company burial, where the company is going to cease to exist after the liquidation? Is it going to be some type of pre-pack where the director is going to liquidate a business and then start a new company and buy the assets from the insolvent business? There's a number of different options that an insolvency professional should walk you through, and then they should give you a formal proposal, and it's putting it in writing for you to consider. Let me have a quick slip of my coffee. Once you've accepted a proposal, there's going to be a raft of information that's needed from you, and I'm going to warn you, there's so much paperwork involved in insolvency. They're going to need statements of who you owe money to, ID, proof of address, accounts, accountants' details, bank statements. There's quite a bit of stuff to collect. But once that's been collected in, the insolvency practitioner will send you your liquidation notices. This is where the process starts. You sign your liquidation notices and you send them back. The insolvency practitioner will then write to all the creditors of the company, informing them there's going to be a creditors meeting, and it's generally 21 days in the future, okay? The creditors meeting, it's not a physical one anymore in 99% of cases. It's done via a phone, and most creditors meetings, there's no one attends. Your creditors don't attend, the HMRC don't attend, the bank don't attend, and if nobody wants to attend your creditors meeting, it's highly likely you won't need to attend. But at the creditors meeting, the insolvency practitioner is appointed, okay? And here is where the issues can rise for directors. The insolvency practitioner is appointed, and they've got to conduct a report into the conduct of the director. They're going to be looking as to what's happened to lead this company up to the point of insolvency. Now, at that point, they're going to be looking certainly at bounce back loan applications. They're going to be looking at bounce back loan use. They're going to be looking at directors' loan accounts. They're going to be looking at the run up to business failure. And what all that investigation work's going to conclude in is a report to the Insolvency Service on the conduct of that director. Okay, so it's really, really important that you understand all this stuff before you appoint a liquidator. Okay, one of the worst things that you can do is rush into insolvency and say questions like, listen, how quickly can I get this tied up and how much is it going to cost to liquidate? They're the questions that are red flags for me. There's so much more to consider if you're thinking about going into liquidation. Unless you're kamikaze and you don't care. And you know what, if you've got no personal assets to protect, you've got no disposable income, maybe that will be the attitude that you take. But if you're watching this video and you have assets, you have a family home with equity in it, you have buy-to-let properties, you have other business interests, you have personal assets that need protecting, I want you to keep watching this to the end. So, let's talk about the impact on directors personally. Because if you're still watching now, that's what you're really interested in. Because although there's a limited protection around a company, right? A director sets up a limited company with a view, well, I'll do it because if anything goes wrong, I'm totally protected with limited liability. And in most cases you are. But there are circumstances where that veil of incorporation can be lifted and you can start to become personally liable for some or all of the business debts. And if you have assets to protect, that can be a particular problem, because the worst place that it can go, it can end up in bankruptcy, where you're forced to sell your family home. Now, hopefully, if you watch enough of my videos, you'll never get to that point. But let's explain some of the areas where you could be made personally liable for business debts. So, first one is wrongful trading. Wrongful trading is where you've become insolvent and you've continued to trade. You've continued to take deposits. You've continued to rack up debts with creditors with no intentions of paying them. I'll give you an example. You're a builder, you're insolvent, you've got no hope of recovery, but you continue to rack up supplier debts and you continue to take deposits off people with no hope of actually fulfilling the job. That is wrongful trading. The insolvency practitioner who gets appointed, that's an area that they're going to try and make you personally liable for. Another area is bounce back loan misuse. Now, bounce back loans, obviously, there was 1.5 million that got that got given out in 2020. Out of the 1.5 million, 250,000 are in default. That's in May 2024. Last year, I think there were 35,000 insolvencies in the UK. That's 2023. And the vast majority of those 35 insolvencies are bounce back loan mistaken. But when people took bounce back loans, they were self-certified. Like literally, you logged onto your bank, you applied what your turnover was, you clicked accept, you ticked a few boxes, and a couple of days later, you landed with some money in your account. And here lies the problem. It was open to abuse, and a lot of abuse was taking place. So I'm going to tell you the type of things that are going to lead to issues for you if you go into liquidation and you've done any of these things. The first one is if you've took a bounce back loan, you were entitled to take one. If your business was not trading on the 1st of January 2020, you was not allowed to take a bounce back loan. So let's say your accounts in 19 and 20 say that you were dormant, your business was not trading. And if you've took a bounce back loan, then you go into liquidation. This is the type of thing that's going to get picked up by the insolvency practitioner. They're going to be chasing you personally for that money. The insolvency services are also going to be informed. The insolvency service would look to disqualify you. And again, there's a thing called a compensation order. It's all the same thing. It's making you personally liable for funds that you shouldn't have taken. Another thing that's going to cause you an issue in liquidation is if you've applied for too much of a bounce back loan. Now remember, the terms of the loan were very clear. You was able to apply for 25% of your turnover in 2019. Now, if your turnover in 2019 was £100,000, you was allowed to take 25,000, no more. If your turnover was 200,000 or above, you was allowed to take 50,000. Remember, the bounce back loan is capped at £50,000. If your turnover was £20,000, you was able to take 5,000. Now, I'm assuming most of you watching this can do basic maths, and if you can't, you've got a phone there to do it on. If you inflated your turnover to get more of a bounce back loan and you go into insolvency, that's going to cause you a problem, because the insolvency practitioner will pick up on it and the insolvency service will pick up on it. And this is where you could be made personally liable. It's also where you could more than likely become disqualified. So it's really, really, really important you check these things before you make any type of inquiries to insolvency practitioners. Another thing that I want to talk about is, another impact on a director personally is going to be if you've signed a personal guarantee. So there's lots of people that I speak to that will have signed PGs with the likes of Capital on Tap, Fleximize, iWalker, Funding Circle, the list goes on. Now, what this means is you've took on personal debt, you've took on a business debt, be it a loan, a credit card, an overdraft facility, and you've signed a personal guarantee, and that personal guarantee says, in the event that I default, in the event that I cannot pay this money back, I am going to personally pay it back. And that can be a huge problem for directors. What I've seen a lot recently is when things are good, that there's been a wave, that there's been a huge spike in lots of money in the economy. 2020, 2021 and pretty much 2022, everything blew up. A lot of entrepreneurs are like, right, I want to ride that wave. And sometimes to ride a wave, you've got to get additional finance to help you gear up and scale. Now, a lot of yous out there, when you're trying to raise finance for your company, you're going to be asked to put a personal guarantee on it. Now, the problem is that wave finished at sort of 2023, and in 2024 things are quite bleak. We're in a recession. So sales for a lot of companies have gone down. Costs have gone up. These debts that you took on and personally guaranteed, they can be quite a high interest, and that's leading to a lot of insolvencies. And if you go into insolvency, into liquidation, having signed a personal guarantee, those lenders or institutions or suppliers are going to ask you to pay it back personally. Now, the key thing to remember here is, even though you've signed a personal guarantee, it's not a charge against your property. It's still difficult to enforce, not impossible. But what you need to do is you really need to take advice on how you're going to deal with that personal guarantee and speak to the lender. Because as long as you are proactive with them and you make an offer to repay that money, albeit over a longer period of time, that lender normally wants their money back. Not normally, they just want their money back. And they'll normally give you some breathing space and time to pay it. So it might be a case of, I don't know, you've took 100 grand in personally guaranteed loans and you're going into liquidation. Well, the people that you've signed personal guarantees with, you've got to talk to them and restructure those loans over a longer period of time. In some cases, they'll actually allow you to pay less for a period till you get back on your feet. And in lots of cases, they'll freeze the interest. So personal guarantees, they're things that can affect you once you go into liquidation. I'm just going to have another slurp of my coffee. Another area that's going to impact a director personally is if they have an overdrawn director's loan account. Now, I'm going to explain to you what one of these things are. An overdrawn loan account is when the director owes the company money. Now, sometimes a company owes a director money, and in that case, the impact on you as a director after insolvency is you lose that money, okay? It's a bitter pill to swallow. But here's the problem, is if you owe the company money and you go into insolvency, an insolvency practitioner is duty bound to try and recover that money from you, okay? So let's go into how do you know if you've got an overdrawn loan account. Well, it'll appear on your accounts, okay? But the problem you're going to face is when you look your accounts up, they're always in the past. They're always a snapshot of the business at some stage in the past. But the starting point would be to go on your accounts, look in assets, look in debtors. There might even be a section that says overdrawn director's loan account, and it will show you at that stage whether you owed the company money or the company owed you money. But you've got to remember is since those last set of accounts, presumably there's been a lot of activity into the business. Certainly you continuing to draw money out of the company. So that director's loan account could have increased. The best way to check this is to have some type of software like Xero or a QuickBooks or a Sage, and as long as you keep it up to date, you can hit the balance sheet or trial balance and it will pull off where your director's loan account is. And the way that these are accrued, I'll go into that a little bit. We're all told to take on money out of the company, a combination of PAYE salary, around £1,000 a month, and to top it up as dividends. That is the most tax efficient way for a director to take money out of the limited company, certainly in 2024. But what people don't get told is you can only take dividends from a company that's making a profit. So if your business is starting to become insolvent and you're not able to pay people, it shows that you're insolvent, so you're not making a profit. Now, if you're continuing to take drawings out of that business above and beyond the salary scheme, in an insolvency, it's highly likely that them drawings that you've taken, and you may even be classing them as dividends, are going to get reclassified by an insolvency practitioner as an overdrawn loan account. And on insolvency, they're going to ask you to pay it back. Now, it's highly likely that you're not going to be able to pay that money back, okay? Because directors of companies, they are, by the very nature, if you're the director of a company, your business is struggling, it's highly likely you're struggling too. And in most cases, an insolvency practitioner has the discretion to do a deal on your overdrawn director's loan account. So you may owe a figure, but as long as you can repay in a relatively quick time scale, the insolvency practitioner will be able to accept a lower settlement. I've done one this week. He owed £40,000. He's had it settled at £19,000 and he's paying it back over 4 months. Now, you're probably thinking, well, how can you get these deals done on directors' loan accounts? And it's about your personal financial position. If you're in rented accommodation with no disposable income, an insolvency practitioner can't really recover a director's loan account from you because you've not got anything. And they're not going to spend money in legal costs trying to recover money from somebody who hasn't got anything. But again, if you're a director there with a family home that has equity in it, you have other properties, you have other business interests, you've got some money, that's where you're really vulnerable in these scenarios, because the more money you've got and the more equity you've got in, say, a family home, the more chance that insolvency practitioner has got to recover all that money from you. And if you don't do a deal with them and you don't deal with this proactively, they could make you bankrupt. They could put a charge on your house and eventually force you to sell your family home. So it's really, really important with directors' loan accounts, you look at this before you make any decisions on insolvency. If you're about to appoint an insolvency practitioner and you have not had this conversation with them, stop. What we do at Director First that's a little bit different is we go through all of these issues with you. We help you understand what your problem is and ways to mitigate the problem. Nothing can ever be swept under the carpet, but it's better to get it all out up front and understand exactly what this is going to cost you in total. Not just the cost of liquidation. Are there any personal implications to you going into insolvency once you appoint the liquidator? There's another area that can sort of cause quite a lot of impact on a director personally after liquidation, and that area is called a transaction under value. A lot of directors, what they'll do is they will perhaps liquidate a business that's become insolvent, but they want to start another company, and they're perfectly entitled to do that. You can start another business, okay? And you can agree to buy the assets of your business that's become insolvent. I don't know, you might be let's say you're a restaurant and the business has become insolvent due to COVID, cost of living, energy crisis, but you see a way through it without the legacy debt. Well, you could pre-pack that business and you could start that business again in the same premises in a new limited company and shed a lot of the unsecured debt like HMRC arrears, the bounce back loan, the C-bills and, you know, energy suppliers. But if you do this and you don't pay for the assets, and they might be tables, chairs, kitchen equipment, coffee machines, if you don't pay a fair value for those assets and you just sign them over to the new company for little money or for a lot less than they're worth, an insolvency practitioner is trained to look for these things. So you'll go into liquidation and the insolvency practitioner will clearly see, well, let's say that your fixed assets in your last set of accounts are 80 grand and you've sold them for 200 quid. Well, it doesn't make sense, that, does it? An insolvency practitioner will look to set that aside and come to you personally for the difference. Again, it's needless aggravation. You can get this done properly at the start, and all you have to do is get an agent involved and let the agent do a true market value on your goods. New company agrees to buy the assets from the old company and you'll get some time to pay it. But again, be wary of transaction undervalues. So let's talk about now what's life like for a director after liquidation. Can a director be disqualified? For how long and under what circumstances? So the circumstances are bounce back loan, trading insolvently. I've got to mention this really famous footballer recently. He has been disqualified from being a director, and the Insolvency Service investigation showed that he failed to pay any VAT or corporation tax between 2018 and 2020. So I think the totals were about £200,000. Now, the mistake that this footballer made, in my humble opinion, is he waited to get wound up by the courts, right? He didn't do a voluntary liquidation. It looks like he just buried his head in the sand and eventually HMRC wound him up. The official receiver got appointed and yeah, he's looked at a lengthy disqualification and some pretty bad press, PR in the press. So I want to also talk to you about something called Section 216. So it's prohibited names. So I mentioned pre-packs where you have a business, you liquidate that business and you start another business. Now, if you do that and you use the same or a similar name, that could result in an insolvency service investigation and them taking action against you personally. So if you're considering starting a new business and you want to use a same or similar name, it's really important you follow a bit of process. There's 3 ways that you can circumnavigate the Section 216 prohibited name. Number 1 is you can apply to court, okay? You can apply to court and see if the court will give you the go-ahead to use the same or similar name. It's quite a lengthy process. It can be quite expensive. I wouldn't suggest that you do it. The second way that you can get around Section 216 is if you already have a business that's been trading over 12 months with the same or similar name. So let's have a think about this. I've got Director First Insolvency Limited. God forbid it's going into liquidation, right? But I want to set up Director First Rescue Limited. And I've got Director First Rescue Limited that's been trading over 12 months. You know, it's got accounts that have been filed. I will not be full foul of the Section 216 prohibited name because I've already got a company with a similar name that's been trading over 12 months. If I've got Director First Rescue Limited and it hasn't been trading over 12 months, it's just been a dormant company, that doesn't count, okay? The third way you can get around the Section 216 rule is if you basically buy the name from the liquidator. So on appointment, you pay the liquidator. Most names have no value, bar to you. So let's say a liquidator will charge you 500 quid plus VAT to buy the name on liquidation. You then buy the name, you then advertise that fact that you've bought the name in something called the London Gazette. I think it costs 180 quid. You've then got 30 days to write to all your creditors to inform them that you've bought that name, and that gets round that. And if you follow one of those options, you won't be getting any headaches from the insolvency service. So I want to talk a little bit about really the emotional and mental impact of you going into liquidation. And remember, I know this, and this puts me in quite a unique position in this industry because I have been there, right? Back in, I think it was 2015, I had to put business into liquidation. It just got out of control. There was a change in government legislation. I lost a lot of contracts. And it, for months and months, I'm on the internet. We're on YouTube. There were bloody nothing like me on there. And I just kept looking at these websites that confused me, and one person said something different to the other. And you know what? I never talked to anyone about it because I was too proud. Bear with us, we just need to, there we go, we're on a sensor in this office, so if I don't move enough, the bloody lights dim. I was too proud to reach out. I had, the fear of failure. What are people going to think of me? And I had the curse of that optimist. I read loads of personal development books. I love all that Tony Robbins and rah stuff. But the problem is they teach you to be positive in every situation. And in insolvency, that can be a real detriment to you. Because when the government made this announcement, they were pulling funding on what I were doing, I should have liquidated then, should have stopped trading and cut my losses, but I didn't. Because I thought I'd get round it. I thought it would turn round. If you'd have come into my office that time when the business was falling around me, because I was such a positive guy, I'd have told you it's about to turn around, and I'd have believed it. And really what I should have done is I should have reached out. So what I'm saying to you is, if you're going through this, speak to somebody. It doesn't have to be me, right? We'll give anyone half an hour here to discuss your options. We've got loads, we're not just good on YouTube, we've got loads of good reviews, hundreds of them. Go and do your due diligence on me and Director First, but speak to somebody. If you're continually going round in your own head, you're trying to solve the problem with potentially what caused the problem. My thinking can be really wonky under extreme stressful situations, and it's at them stages I've got mentors, I've got peers, I've got people I can discuss my shit with. So please, I implore you, don't try and get through this, be brave, carry the world on your shoulder. It really is good to talk. I want to just go on now about how you protect your interests. Because that's what this is about. If you're going into insolvency, you've got to remember that an insolvency is going to trigger an investigation by an insolvency practitioner. They're trained to look for problems. They're trained to look for things that you've done wrong. And if they find it, that's where it could cost you more money in the long run. So keep an eye on your director's loan account. Dead important. If the business is starting to hit the skids, consider changing the way that you pay yourself. Consider reducing the amount that you pay yourself. Because everything you take, what you class as a dividend once you're insolvent, in insolvency it's going to get converted to an overdrawn loan account. Remember, that's where your house could be at stake. If you've got an overdrawn loan account and you're going into liquidation, it's really important that you have this conversation with the insolvency practitioner up front. So what we do here is we help you find out what your director's loan account is. We'll go to any lengths to help you understand exactly where you are today. Not where your director's loan account was 18 months ago. That is not helpful. Where it is today, the day you stop trading. And once we've figured that out, we'll go to the insolvency practitioner and go, right, the director's loan account is here. This is their affordability, this is how much their house is worth, this is how much equity they've got all this personal debt, etc. And we put together the picture, and then we'll help you negotiate a settlement on your director's loan account and as long a time as possible to pay it. Remember, it's really important if you've got stuff to lose, personal property, assets, cash, buy-to-lets or the business interests. If you don't have any property, you have no disposable income, most of the time your director's loan account is going to be written off. But if you've got stuff to lose, this is really time to take a deep breath and make sure you understand your position, where you're at and what you're going to do about it. And again, that's what we specialise in here in Director First. You do not want to be signing any liquidation papers until you've had in writing what the insolvency practitioner is going to settle your director's loan account at. Now, a lot of them are going to say, well, listen, we've still got to carry out the investigation. So this is why it's important that you tell them everything, you show them the evidence, because once you're in liquidation, the bank's going to send the bank account statements to the insolvency practitioner, and they're going to go through that with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that what you're telling them before you appoint them is the same as what they find once you're in liquidation. I also want to talk about the importance of compliance and cooperation with the insolvency practitioner, not only during the liquidation process, but actually post-liquidation. They might ask you questions and queries, they might ask for further information. If you've agreed to pay your director's loan account over a period of time, you're going to have to pay it. If you've agreed to pay for assets over a period of time, you're going to have to pay it. If you bury your head in the sand and you start not to comply, they'll report that to the insolvency service. You know, it's a serious thing that you're entering into here. Just be mindful of, you've got to work with that insolvency practitioner, certainly for a few months afterwards, till they conclude your case. So, I hope you found this video helpful. It's been a bit of a longer one, but I've put a lot out on the table there, a lot to consider. If you like, comment, subscribe to our channel. If you want free, impartial and independent advice for all your corporate insolvency questions, get in touch with us. My name is Worden. I'm from Director First. Thank you for your time.